If you can't control the money you're already making, then making more money won't solve the problem. It's only going to amplify it. You've got to get that in your head, that more money is not the answer.
Hi everyone, Rob here, and welcome back to another episode of the Trade Den podcast. Great to have you back, Dan. How's things?
Still good, Rob. Ready for part 2 of this series. Really excited about today. Very strategic day we've got coming up.
Yeah, we're going to talk all things numbers, strategy, plugging holes in financial buckets. Today's more of a strategy conversation compared to last episode, which on this series was more of a mindset conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was great feedback we got on last week's episode as well around some of those principles, and it really hit a chord with some people around those mindset challenges and unlocking why people find themselves in the situation they're in.
Yeah, as we say in coaching, success in business is almost 80 to 90% mindset or 10 to 20% strategy. So if you can wrap your head around last week's episode from a mindset perspective, understand what it is, what got you there, what's it costing you now, and what to shift from a mindset perspective, that's going to put you in an absolute completely different frame of reference to be able to get stuck into today, which is where rubber absolutely has to meet the road.
Yeah, for sure. So let's start with profit slippage and just do a quick review of that concept of the leaky bucket. So profit slippage is like money leaking out of a bucket. It can start small, but over time it can do significant damage and add up to significant financial losses rather quickly. It's almost like those little holes become big holes very quickly if we get this wrong. And at Pravar, we've got a pretty clear understanding of how profit slippage sneaks into trades businesses. And what we're going to do today is explore those probably the top 5 holes that we see over and over again, and explore how to rectify those or plug those holes for good.
Yeah, they're almost like foundational strategies. Now, obviously, beyond this, there's more complex financial management systems that need to come in place. But unless you can get these foundations in place, there's no point even moving on to the complex advanced ones, is there?
No, and I think this is where people go wrong. They start looking for magic bullets, developing a superpower, something like that they can take away that's going to fix everything all at once. And it doesn't work like that. You start off small, you plug these 5 holes, you'll be amazed at what can come.
Yeah, and it's not just doing one of them. And obviously, we're going to stress this at the end of this episode, where you do one at a time over time. And I'm going to say that again. It's one strategy at a time over time. And one strategy can make a world of difference to you. It can be the difference between 50 and 100 grand into your bottom line over the next 12 months. But when you start to compound 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these strategies all starting to work together, this is what contributes to big improvements in your bottom line. So one will make a difference, 2 or more will have a massive compounding effect.
Yeah, and aside from the results you'll get just from implementing the strategies, what we're doing, remember, the overarching theme that we're talking about is being prepared and being able to manage growth moving forward. That's really the name of the game, which is what this is going to do. So let's kick off and let's talk about profit slippage. And when we talk about profit slippage, we can identify sort of 2 types of holes in our bucket. The first one is a revenue hole, or holes that are to do with the money coming in and not having that quite right. The other one is around expense holes, or the money going out and problems with that. So let's start with revenue holes and the money coming in. And the first hole we're going to plug is making sure that we've got the right pricing structure. This is critically important, obviously, because it runs through the entire rest of your financial stream, all the way down to the bottom line. So Rob, kick us off and tell us a little bit about why we end up in this, why we get pricing wrong in the first place.
Fundamentally, most trades business owners have never been taught how to price jobs correctly. That's fundamentally issue number 1. And number 2 is they also don't understand their own costs and their numbers of their own business. And so when they've never been taught how to price, or their understanding of their own uniqueness and costs of their own business, they don't know how to derive at the right price to generate enough margin to not only break even, let alone actually make a profit within their business.
So a lot of those concepts, and I agree with you, they don't understand the mechanics of pricing. So how do people actually price? Like how do you price when you don't know what you're doing to come up with a price?
Yeah, I think it's, they often got a pricing spreadsheet off their old boss. That's probably first where a lot of people start. They worked for someone else, and that's a starting point for them, which is not a bad starting point. They borrow a pricing strategy off one of their mates in the industry, which is fraught with danger as well. Or worse yet, one of my biggest bugbears is they price based on what everyone else is doing in the industry. And I see it all the time in trades groups or whatever it is. Someone will go, "Hey guys, what's everyone charging in this industry, in this space?" And that's just fraught with danger, because how do you even know if they're pricing correctly and their business is potentially completely different to yours? And so it's just fraught with danger going down that path.
Yeah, and I think it also lends itself then to just how do you win work against the person who's pricing you based it off? You're obviously going to say, well, I'll come in a little bit under what they're doing. So you're actually just eroding the profit that's in the jobs across the board. So if everyone's doing that, it really doesn't help.
Yeah, it creates a whole race to the bottom part of the industry. And one of the biggest issues in the industry is everyone undercuts each other. And the reason why everyone undercuts each other, because people actually don't understand their numbers, and they don't understand what it costs to run their unique business, even though they're all in the same industry. But everyone's different, everyone's unique, everyone's got different cost bases. But if everyone just stood firm in the industry and actually charged what they would worth, the whole industry at a different level would change for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about that, and there's no one size fits all pricing, and that it's unique to your business, how is it that I need to change my pricing maybe over time? Like, what happens then? Because if I take that initial spreadsheet, which you just said was it's a good place to start, what goes on that means that it's now no longer relevant, or I start to run into issues with pricing?
Yeah, I think talking a bit about the uniqueness of that business is every business is unique, and everyone works in different sectors. Even though you might have a Sparky, an electrical business, the way that a service or maintenance business in the domestic space prices different to the way that they do that in the commercial or the industrial space, compared to how they do it in the maintenance versus construction or projects. Even though they're an electrical business, everyone prices that you got to price differently depending on what market you're in there. It also comes down to geographical locations. Where are you based, in the city versus in the country? Also, what spaces do you service, and what's your actual offering, your uniqueness, competition, demand. Like, there's so many things in when it comes to pricing which determine how a business owner can derive their price. That's why we say in coaching that there's actually no one size fits all pricing model.
Yeah, and pricing, it's flexible. That's what I always come back to. It's got to flex. It doesn't stay fixed. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They sort of think pricing set and forget, and they forget pretty quick. They leave it for way too long. And I think as we talk about this concept of how do you prepare for sustainable managed growth, this idea of being able to flex pricing is really important.
Yeah, it's got to evolve as the business evolves. And the pricing model that got you into business is potentially not the pricing model that you need to today, and it won't be where you're going to be in a couple of years' time. When you're in the early phases of business, you probably started out as a contractor, contracting to other businesses, and maybe you were charging $60, $70 an hour plus GST. But then what happens is that contractor gets busy, they put an apprentice on, they put another tradesman on, and then all of a sudden their costs as that business goes up, but they almost hold on to that pricing model out of loyalty to their customer base, or potentially fear of what might happen if I was to put up my prices.
Yeah, and I think we see this all the time. I can think of I've got tons of stories about clients where we have this exact conversation. What's sort of in your mind? I'll test you. What's the one you'd go to in terms of a client where we saw this? Probably one of the best examples of it.
We started working with Chris, who's a Sparky, recently, and Chris was that common example where he got into the market at a bit of a lower rate because it was only him put on two guys around him, and his prices were way too low. He was that contractor charging out at $80 an hour plus GST, and he'd been there for a long time. And he's like, "Rob, I don't understand why I've got cash flow problems. So he was feeling the symptom, didn't know the root cause. And part of our initial strategy session up front is one of the first things that I look at is I test their pricing in the marketplace to be able to see if that's a hole. And for him, he's way under. In the early parts of coaching, we got him to be able to really understand his true cost of labor. And that just blew his mind, because by the time he did his hourly rate plus super, plus workers' comp, plus non-billable time, annual leave, sick leave, and everything, the true on-costed rate of his team was something like $65 or $70 an hour. And that just blew his mind to the point he's like, I'm charging 80. It cost me $65 an hour to run a guy. That was like, that blew his mind for him. That was a real aha moment for him.
Yeah, and those guys, when we have that conversation, and Chris had this, right? He was the same way. It's like, well, how the hell am I going to do this? It's almost, you have that realization. It's like, great, now I know it. But then there's that almost dread of, well, what do I do about it? I can't possibly add to my price that much. I can't increase or flex my prices that much. So people get really, I think, scared at a certain point to do anything. Then it's either, well, I've got to go back because I can't make any money, but I can't possibly charge more. So when it comes to Chris, what was sort of the punchline or the financial upshot of that? He was definitely scared.
It was, and for him, it was a $90,000 improvement in his bottom line over a 12-month period, and he did that within 3 months. And the way that he was able to do that is to pull apart all his pricing, understand the true cost of his labor. There was a lot of fear involved with it because he had very loyal customers. They'd seen him through this whole growth curve. We coached him through where his pricing needed to be, how to have the conversation with his customers, and what was the potential risk of upping his prices and losing some customers. He went into it with confidence. No customers, by the way, dropped off.
No.
They just all copped it because everything's going up at the moment. He started charging what he was worth, confident in his pricing. His hourly rate reflected the type of work that he was doing. He didn't lose a single customer, and bang, 90 grand straight to his bottom line over the next 12 months, purely from that one strategy. And now when he goes from 4 to 5 to 6 guys, it's a compounding effect the more ground crew that he adds to his business. Huge result.
Yeah, prepared for growth, managing it responsibly and really making the most of it, which is great. All right, let's leave that one there. Let's go to our sort of key takeaway number 2. And this is the second hole that occurs when people understand that the price that they need to charge. And this can happen when you get a guy like Chris, for instance, who makes the move to advertise or publish new prices, but still has that fear probably kicking around, and they start to discount too quickly, or they discount too deeply.
Yeah, there's 2 types of discounting in our world at Pravar. Number 1 is dropping your pants to win the job.
That's a no.
And number 2 is doing work for free. And that's in the form of either not capturing variations or just being a good bloke and just doing shit for free because someone asks. And they're the 2 areas of discounting that are common in the trade space.
Yeah, we get a lot of guys push back and say, no, I never discount prices. I don't really do that. And then we ask that question around, do you do work for free? They're like, what do you mean? And variations, they're sort of, I'm pretty good on that. And it's that thing of, do you ever hear your guys, or have you thought about it, or you ever get those requests, hey, while you're here, can you do me a quick job? Can you put this extra PowerPoint in, or can you just move that a little bit? And that comes at cost, right? So you're incurring the cost, which means the margin you're making on that job is going to slip. You're going to lose money, or you're discounting the value of that job by not charging for things.
Yeah, it's a huge one. It's variation management is a really big strategy that takes a lot of time to implement into a business, because there's so much that has to go on at the start of a job before you even get to a job to know what is and isn't a variation. And we'll record another episode on and around handover processes and job packs, but it comes down to clear scope, really good handover from sales to operations, inclusions, exclusions, and educating your team around what actually is the job, so that when a customer is there and they're asking things like, hey, while you're here, can you get this done, like you said? Or, hey, mate, can you just quickly check this out for us? Those leading statements is a little alarm bell going, hang on a second, variation here. Let's just make sure that this is or isn't included in the job. And so that's the best way to be able to hear out for them.
Yeah, one of the best ones I had was one of our clients came out to do some electrical work, and he sent out his team. It was one of the young guys in a trade, and they sort of said they've finished the job. Is there anything else you'd like us to do? It'll probably be cheaper if we do it now while we're here. And it was a great question. It wasn't we're going to do it for free. Of course, I had a list, but the minute I brought it up, they said, "Yep." So just let me explain the cost of that. You happy for us to go ahead? And of course I was, because there was still the savings, but I saw the value in what we were doing. And we talk about adding value and not discounting. So that whole idea of doing work for free is sort of a sneaky way of doing it. Obviously, dropping your pants is one way to discount, and we sort of tell guys not to do that. But what about other stories you can think about not capturing or charging variations correctly?
Yeah, I remember working with a builder in Sydney, run a really good business, like a really premium product that they build in the marketplace. And he wasn't, he came into coaching, cash flow problems, couldn't understand why he was losing money and going backwards. And one of the first questions I asked him was, Robbie, how are you going about your capturing and managing your whole variation process? And he goes, Rob, we're horrible at it. And we build these beautiful homes, and when a customer asks us to do something, we just get it done. And the guys are so busy, we just don't have the systems in place to be able to capture it. And so that was a huge thing for him.
Yeah, absolutely. We see that all the time, don't we? And the amount of money is staggering. I mean, even that example you're just talking about there with the builder in Sydney, what sort of a financial impact of that sort of strategy when we play it out?
That worked out to be roughly about 100 grand that year that he realized that he left on the table. 100 grand. And that's come through money that he pulled out of his pocket for pay for materials and labor to do that work for free. It's a form of discounting. And instead of having posture to be able to go, yes, we can do it, but let me quote it for you and let's get it signed off before we start that job. And 100 grand, that's a shitload per year.
It is. And we see that, you said over a year. I mean, we see these, when you recover from a hole like that and you plug that hole, it's almost instant. You start to see that you've got so much more water in the bucket, to keep on our analogy. It's almost immediate, the impact of saying, right, we're going to put a focus on this and plugging this hole.
Correct, because what this enabled for this builder was once we plugged that hole in the bucket, new water level rose. That then, because he wanted to be able to leverage his time, he was working crazy hours, nights, weekends, and he had no structure around him. The reason why he had no structure was he couldn't afford it. And so we did a parallel play. We plugged the hole in the bucket, that freed up cash, that cash paid for structure. And it was like, whack, boom, improvement straight away. And so plugged the hole, bought back probably 30 hours of his week. Bang, off we go. It's a game changer when you just get to the root cause of actually what's really going on in your business, plug it and move on, and off you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. All right. So there's two really good, solid strategies at the revenue side, the money coming in, what we do with that. Let's go and turn our attention to a couple on the expense side, of the money going out. And the first one I think we're going to talk about is turning our attention to the holes that, I think it's one of the biggest ones. And in my opinion, it's probably the easiest to fix in terms of plugging it. And it's one that you probably can go back to time and again, given enough time in between. And that's keeping an eye on the prices you're being charged by your suppliers.
Huge one. This is one that needs to be managed carefully, because we never want to be in the position where we're screwing our suppliers over, because they need us and we need them. That's what we've got to remember in business. And so when you're engaging with suppliers, you've always got to enter into a supplier relationship with a win-win type of mindset. Now, there's plenty of trades business out there going, yeah, I get screwed by my suppliers all the time, but that's their business. In your business, you've got to make sure that you look to them as a partnership, not you screwing them. So it's really important to remember, when you go down this line of a strategy to plugging your whole of getting better pricing from your suppliers, you've got to enter it into a win-win relationship.
Yeah, there's so much we can do, and there'll be future episodes on negotiation and key questions in negotiating, even this whole strategy about supplier pricing. But I think if you go into it with the mindset, I'm chasing down a fair and reasonable outcome.
Yeah.
And if you can say that up front, just the very first tactic, hey, I want to be fair and reasonable, but ask you for the best price, that alone sets you on a course to get a good outcome and not get to that point where the supplier thinks you're out to gouge them or they're looking for retribution on the next price increase they can slip in. It sets you up to have a really good relationship.
I'd agree, because if they can, you've got to remember they've got to make money as well. If there's no money in it for them, they're not going to help you, but they want your business. And so if you can keep them honest and fair, then they're always going to be looking for ways to help you out, especially if it's a live job. And especially if you've got a good relationship with them, they're going to come to the party more. Why wouldn't they?
So in terms of being able to recognize when to plug this hole, and this is one, like I said just before, you can come back to this one again. It tends to be something you can do semi-regularly. But in terms of knowing where you're at with this hole, there's probably a couple of key questions we like to ask.
It's probably asking yourself, when was the last time you actually sat down and negotiated rates with your current suppliers?
Yeah, and that's different. That's different to saying, well, I'm across my supplier pricing because I'm quoting so often or I'm seeing so many supplier prices across my desk.
Correct. And I think the danger is that people just rely on their feeds and the pricing from their suppliers that they either manually update into their pricing spreadsheets or automatically through into their job management system or their quoting software. There's a big difference between that versus actually going into the branch and sitting down with them and going, hey, how are we going? What can you do? How can you help? What can we do together to be able to sharpen up what we're doing here?
Yeah, we do this all the time. I remember a client I did this with, and I said, ask the question, do they have tiered accounts? Like, what tier are you on as a customer? And what has to happen in order for you to get to the next tier? Or am I on the right tier? We unlock something huge just from that sort of one question and understanding the difference between seeing prices and negotiating prices. What about some of the other questions we got?
It's making sure, do you actually get multiple quotes from suppliers for a big job that you might have coming up? So not just going to your preferred supplier. It's about sending out the whole quote that you got a price and sending that out to multiple suppliers. Now, some supplier might come to the party and give you a very sharp price on the whole job. Then other suppliers might be able to give you a sharp price on elements of the job, and then you know who to buy it for going forward on that job. But it's asking yourself the question, when was the last time you actually shopped a job across multiple suppliers to get the very best price?
Yeah, and this is why most suppliers will say that they've got a policy of we'll match price happily, but no one really does it. No one comes in, or very few people will come in and say, hey, I have got an alternative price. Are you willing to match it? And even if they can't do it forever on that one job, if you're diligent, if you are getting multiple prices, you can take advantage of that and unlock some huge, huge savings on jobs. So let's talk about then, we're talking about in terms of setting up jobs. What about when you win the job? Have you got any sort of feel for how often you need to renegotiate prices with your suppliers?
One of the best ways is once you've won a job, like once you've actually got a live job in your hand, that's the best opportunity for you to be able to go back and reshop your suppliers. Because when you're quoting a job, you haven't won it yet. And if it's a really big job, then you're probably pricing it up against multiple contractors, and that supplier is probably getting the same job that they're pricing the same time. But if you go into your suppliers and you go, hey, we've won this job, we've got a contract on this, what's the very best price we can do on supplies for this job now? What it means is it doesn't mean you change your sales price, but what you've got is the ability to be able to negotiate down the cost price of what you're purchasing your materials for, which you don't want to pass that cost saving on to your customer. That's just money in your back pocket to be able to improve the margin on the job that you've already won. And so that's a really great way of, once you won a job, to be able to go and negotiate to improve already a good margin that you've already won on.
Yeah, so negotiating on the basis of work actually secured and won, as opposed to, hey, price this for me, and if we get it, great for you.
Correct. And you might be able to buy in bulk. You might be able to do the whole package deal together from that one supplier. Or you never know. They might be having a dip in their sales that month, and they'll give you a ripping price to be able to boost their sales number. You just never know unless you ask a question.
Yeah, awesome. So it helps you either get a job across the line or it improves margin after you've got the job, which is really cool. When we talk about we've talked about financial impacts on that revenue side. What sort of your average that you've seen? I know for me it's quite significant, but what would you say if you could peg a figure on it in your experience for people doing this properly?
I'd say anywhere between 5 and 10% at least in a reduction of material costs.
Straight up.
Straight up.
Incredible.
Spend a couple $100,000 on materials, and if you can save 5 to 10% of that, it's just money straight on your bottom line. It's just money. It's money for jam just by asking a simple question: how can you help? What can we do?
Yeah, and I think this comes back to that idea. We even seeded this in the last one. It's not about just doing the job and doing it as quickly as you can. It's about managing the job the right way. And if you're managing all the little pieces, one of the things you can do is manage your supply prices. So that's how this comes into it.
Correct. And I think so many business owners are so busy with quotes piling up on their desk, and they're doing them late at night, and you can't pick up a phone at 11 o'clock at night and ring your suppliers for a quote that's due the next day. So that's why you got to be organized with your quotes. You got to be on top of your quotes and prioritize them. But so many business owners are just so far behind in their quoting that they miss the opportunity to do it. So if you can get on top of this, not only are you going to get your quotes out the door, which improves your conversion rate, but it also helps you get sharper pricing, which means that you're going to be able to win more work anyway at a better price. So it's a win-win across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. It's one of my favorites to go to all the time. We never fail when we do it. There's always a win to be had by negotiating those prices. So we've got probably 2 more holes to go. Before we do, I just want to make sure we've got it clear. Let's do a little bit of a mini recap. So the first couple of points that we talked about were all to do with what jobs are costing you and how much you're charging with them.
Yeah, so number 1 is make sure you got the right pricing strategy. That's number 1. Number 2 is making sure that you're not discounting. And remember, discounting comes in the form of dropping your pants to get the job across the line, or once you've won the job, not charging for variations because you don't have a great system to be able to capture them. And number 3, it's your ability to negotiate with suppliers. And remember, it's not about screwing your suppliers. It's about creating a win-win opportunity to get the very best prices for your materials.
Nice. So really mechanical, really sort of in and out strategies that you can do. So as we turn the corner now, let's look at our last couple. And these are sort of concerned more with management of jobs. So not so much just what things are costing you or how much you're charging for things. What it is, the fact is that it really doesn't matter how sharp you price work or what you're paying for materials if you aren't actively measuring and managing the productivity of the people responsible for delivering that work on time and on budget.
Yeah, this one's huge for me. Number 4 is managing productivity or managing labor. Labor is one of the most leaky holes in any business. And that's because someone knows when they spend 2 or 3 or 4 grand on a bit of material that sits on a job site. But 4 grand in labor can slip through the cracks very, very easily. That's the issue.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is definitely one of the biggest holes in that financial bucket. And I think it's one that keeps coming up. It requires diligence. It's probably the most persistent hole. And by that, I mean, don't think you can put a Band-Aid over this, think, yep, we've dealt with that. We've had a toolbox meeting. We've discussed being productive. I've been on the guys this week. They should be able to turn the corner and step up. It just doesn't work that way when it comes to managing productivity.
Yeah. I had a strategy session just the other day, and this was actually with someone who found the podcast and loved it. And we jumped on a really good call together because he wants to make some improvements in his business. And one of the biggest areas that we found was a big hole in his business was his level of productivity. And now I'm not able to quantify that number yet, but the biggest issue for improvement is the schedule and minimizing downtime. And so what I mean by the schedule is they were sending guys all over the place because the schedule wasn't managed tight enough. And then the amount of downtime that they couldn't charge for in that in that schedule was huge. And so this is what's going to become the basis of his plan on a page in launch, to be able to get in there and fix this. And it's going to be a massive opportunity for him. We haven't quantified it yet, but there's an example that it's just sitting. It was right in my face, but he couldn't see it because he was down in the weeds in his business. There was, coming from an objective point of view, from a coaching point of view, it stood out like dog's balls if that's what the issue was.
Yeah, it's about managing, and it comes from, I think, you go out and you try and win the work, and you're working really hard to do that. Make sure the pricing's right, supplier strategies are all good, everything's in place. We've won the work, great. Then there's that thing we're saying, I'm not going to be involved on the job, so it's got to be delivered, and then we don't see it till the very end. So there's that time gap, and it's almost like that black hole in the middle, that unless the expectations are set up so that people know what you're expecting to see at the other end, there's no other option but to have it smack you in the face no matter what's happened. And by then it's almost too late. The hole's already wreaked havoc. The leaks have already occurred.
Yeah, correct. And I think in previous episodes, we've spoken around how you've got to unlock capacity in your ground crew to unlock new phases of growth and all those types of things. But the key messages that we kept hitting home in those previous episodes was about managing productive labor to manage profitable growth. Is managing productive labor to manage profitable growth. And a great example I remember of this was a builder that we worked with many years ago now. And his team were always saying, Carl, we don't have enough guys on site. We need more labor. How often do we hear that in clients, where the team always think they need more and the business owner thinks they need more? This guy was running break even worse, going backwards. And when we unpacked his resourcing, he had 10,000 available man hours for his team. And for the work that he had locked in, loaded in his pipeline, couldn't take on any more work for the next 12 months. He needed 5,000 available man hours. And so immediately we just went whack and cut almost half of his team. And that freed up a couple of $100,000 like that. And the team didn't love it, and we had to go through the whole strategy and the change management process. There was a whole lot that went into that whole story. But there's a prime example where on the team in one instance is saying we need more. The owner thinks they need more. They couldn't understand why they were breaking even or going backwards. And it was purely just came down to mismanagement of labor on the ground.
It's amazing. What was the impact? I mean, I'm trying to do the sums in my head. How many guys? We've cut the team in half. What was the financial impact of the whole strategy?
They let go of 3 guys. So that would be 8, 16, probably about 240 grand.
Yeah, absolutely. Massive. And there was apart from managing the situation, the HR element of that, managing the morale of the team and everything, there's no downside to that at all. They didn't lose work. They didn't suffer because of it.
Correct. And we call that right-sizing your team. And when you're going through challenges like that, whether you've got unproductive workforce or your business has gone through a growth period, then it's shrunk, you have to get on the front foot and right-size your team. And it's labor. For the majority of the time, it's labor. Labor is always a big go-to for us in coaching, and it's one of the biggest areas. You got people, you don't want to let them go because, what happens if we win this next job? And it's taken me so long to find these people and build a team. But you've got to be, as a business owner, you've constantly got to be managing resources to revenue and making sure that you're maximizing the productivity of the team that you've got. Otherwise, you will literally just burn cash all day long.
Yeah, and I think that's a big question to ask. We talked about key questions in the last one, but ask yourself, who's managing productivity at the levels we just spoke about? Who's going through that process of helping you or actually is responsible for delivering the productivity at the levels it needs to be profitable in the business?
Yeah, in coaching, we refer to the concept called labor stacking. And that's where it's like, I've got a big job, let's just throw labor at it and hopefully we'll chew through that job quicker and faster. But what often happens is the more labor you put on it, the less productive people actually become. And that's because guys hide, they fuck around on their phone. They take the piss, and so in business, managing that workforce or that pool of labor is super important. And you've got to think about your team as like an investment. And if you're spending $500,000 on labor per year of billable labor, you want to make sure that you're maximizing the return on investment from that investment that you're making per year. No one person in their right mind would just drop $500,000 on an investment and then not manage it. They expect a return, whether it's in property, shares, or whatever it is. But when it comes to business, you don't want to treat your team like a number. You've got to be able to build a high-performing team and create a great culture. But you've got to remember that as a billable unit within your business, you've got to make sure that you're maximizing the return that you're getting for paying for that person in your business. It's an absolute must.
Yeah, it is. And I think we talk about this in coaching when we talk around these stories. It's if you're not managing that productivity, then it's no different to saying, all right, I'm going to take $500,000. I'm going to walk into the casino, put it on red, and then I'm going to look away, and then hopefully I'll turn around when they say the roulette will stop spinning, and hopefully it comes up red. Hopefully we've made money at the end of the job is the equivalent. We see people making that risk all the time.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our last point, key point number 5. And this one, at this point, we've ensured that when it comes to running jobs, how much you charge, what they cost, that people are being efficient. We've plugged those holes. But there's one more hole we've got to discuss, and that's fixed expenses. And fixed expenses are all the items that are required in order to keep the lights on and retain your staff. But why do we refer to this as part of our financial bucket?
Fixed expenses are the expenses, the operational costs of running your business. And when you're a smaller business, you naturally have to run very lean and mean to be able to be viable in the early stages. But when a business starts becoming successful, in inverted commas, they often become sloppy in their spending. And this is one of the biggest risks that a business owner can face, is that the more successful they become and the more money that starts rolling through the door, that's in proportion to their level of spending. And this becomes a big issue because all of a sudden then they start getting on this subscription or buying these phones or being sloppy with their spending money in terms of entertainment and computers and hardware and motor vehicles and fit outs and all these niceties that you would never spend your money on when you're in the early stages of your business. And for most parts of it, it's just complete wastage and unnecessary spending.
Yeah, especially these days when like everything's on subscription, especially if it's IT or software related, you guarantee you're paying a subscription and you don't buy it outright. But the amount of money we see falling into unused licenses or software that was a good idea once, or who turned that off? No one did. Oh, hang on, we're still paying for that. That's it comes up so often in today's world and the way that businesses operate.
Correct. And if I was to walk into your business and grab $3,000 and walk out, you'd chase me down the bloody street going, Rob, you just stole $3,000 from me.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't manage your expenses tight enough, that's what happens. You're allowing people to do away with your money. And you've got to remember that overheads are paid out of the margin that you make from jobs. And so if you're running on a 25% margin Inc. labor and you spend something for 10 grand, you don't just have to make 10 grand to spend that 10 grand. You've actually got to do a $40,000 job, spend $30,000 on material labor to have $10,000 left over to be able to pay for that overhead. And when business owners get their head around that, it's like, oh shit, it's not just a 10 grand job I've got to do to be able to pay for that. It's actually 40 grand or whatever your numbers are. Then they start appreciating the tightening up of their costs in their business.
Yeah, and by plugging that hole, what they can gain on the back end. We'll tell a story about that in a minute. I know you've got one. So, but what's the action then? I think people understand, yeah, I'm probably being a bit sloppy, but how do I stop being sloppy? Is it just a matter of cutting all spending, like, we're not going to spend anything anymore?
Number one's a mindset. Number two is a strategy. Mindset wise is, despite how successful you are, it's all about always constantly running lean and mean. It's having the mindset of lean and mean despite your success. And so that's mindset number one. Strategy is the next one. Is the easiest way that I've found to be able to do it is either go line by line through your profit and loss, or line by line in your bank statement, and identify the things that you're spending your money on. And that's everything from insurances, equipment loans, phones, subscriptions,
motor vehicles,
you name it. And it's your ability to be able to go through all those things, identify all the areas that you're being sloppy in your spending. Don't worry about the rats and mice. Prioritize the things that matter and get straight in there and go back and either cut it or renegotiate. And it's the easiest way to be able to drop money to your bottom line like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep an eye on those subscriptions, whatever you do. All right. What about one more client story? I know you want to tell the story about Sean the painter.
I remember working with Sean, and we reckon we found around 80 grand a year of just sloppy spending. And that was in unnecessary marketing activity, subscriptions, promotions that he was doing. 80 grand, like that just went whack straight to his bottom line. And that took us a couple of weeks in coaching. Pretty good.
Couple of weeks for 80 grand.
Yeah, huge.
It's amazing, isn't it? And especially when you've got someone who's sitting there going, I can't afford to get people, or I can't afford to, whatever you can't afford to do. When you see a saving of 80 grand hit in a couple of weeks, it's all of a sudden, what else can I do?
Correct.
Amazing what can come out of that. I love it. Huge result. And I think across the board, if we went through them, each of those stories you've told, like you said at the beginning, we sort of talked a big game and talked about that 50 to 100K savings over 12 months. We've absolutely seen that. And we see that time and time again, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. And so if you're sitting here and you're in that position where you've got cash flow problems, or you know that there's absolutely holes in your financial bucket and you just don't know where to start, the first place you can start is jumping into the show notes, booking a call with me, and let's jump on a call to be able to identify where the holes are in your bucket. And I know that we can save anywhere from 50 to 100 grand over the next 12 months just by plugging one or more of these holes in your business. I'm absolutely confident in that. So why wouldn't you do it? You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So jump into the show notes, book in a call. Let's see where the opportunities are, where you're leaving money on the table, and let's see how we can change your world over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. All right. As we always do, let's talk about key takeaways from today and bring this one home. I'll kick off if it's all right with you. I think the first key takeaway, which is really the whole emphasis we put on these two episodes, if you can't control the money you're already making, then making more money won't solve the problem. It's only going to amplify it. You've got to get that in your head, that more money is not the answer.
Yeah, if you're experiencing profitability or cash flow problems, find the root cause, not focus on the symptom. And what we mean by that is, just like the leaky bucket, it's not enough just to put water in it. You can't just keep putting more water in the top of it. You need to plug the holes before you start adding layers of growth.
Yeah. The next one is any of these strategies. And hopefully you've heard that today. And you might be sitting there going, I could do all 5 of these. Fantastic. But let's stress the point that any one of these strategies can make a massive difference to the profitability of your business. And don't forget that thing that we talked about, one at a time, over time. Don't try and do all 5 at once. Do one of them really well, get that benefit, stop that hole. And as you said, raise the water level or the water line that's available in your bucket, and you'll find that you've got so many more options.
Yeah, love it. Next one for me is that anyone can implement these strategies. Anyone can. It just requires a bit of focus, a bit of discipline. It's about a bit of clarity on what that hole is. And then it's your ability to upskill yourself to be able to know what lever to pull and how to pull it so you can get the outcome you desire.
Yeah, absolutely. Last one, put your pride aside and ask for help. When we start talking about mindsets and things that we're maybe not good at, we struggle with, that have traditionally been a weakness or a bit of an Achilles heel, you've got to swallow your pride at some point and get the help you need. Because the reality is, if you knew how to fix these holes, you wouldn't have them in the first place. So if this has resonated, if you've sort of gone, yeah, I've got these holes, your next step isn't to either run away from them. That's definitely not the next step. It's not to hide from them. It's not even just to say, well, I'll get my head down and I'll try and fix them. Ask for the help you need. Come back to that power team that we've talked about over the last couple of episodes. Start having conversations that are going to assist you to fill those holes once and for all.
Yeah, because the reality is, if you knew how to fix it, you probably wouldn't be in the situation that you are in at the moment. So put your hand up for help and don't be too proud to ask for it. Let's talk action steps, hey? Let's round out this episode. What a cracker of a mini-series. And let's put a big bow around this now around talking to action steps. Like Dan said before, it's not about choosing all 5 strategies at once. It's one strategy at a time, over time. So choose one strategy that you feel like's going to add the biggest bottom line impact to your world and see what you can find and see what opportunities you can uncover in your business, whether it's 10 grand, 20 grand, 30, 50, 100 grand, whatever it is. Pull that lever, actualize the result, and then move on to the next one. But we want to be able to hear back from you as well. Make sure you get the conversation started in the Trade Den Facebook community. Let us know what you found. Let's get some scores on the board. We want to hear some hard and fast numbers, regardless of what strategy you've been able to enact. But one at a time, over time, and let's see what collectively we can do as a community to be able to improve our bottom lines over the next 3 to 6 to 12 months.
And if you're stuck and you don't know which one to pick, make sure you do go into the show notes and hit the link to book in your call, have a chat to Rob, really find out what it is you should work on. Either it's one out of the many that you think you can do, which one should you do? Or if you don't even know where to begin, still make that conversation, still make that call, have a booking in with Rob, and you can learn what that next step will be for you.
Thanks for tuning in today and looking forward to coming back to you next week. Thanks, team.
We'll see you then.